This is Vocabulary Improvement, February 10th, 2015, and the first word is churlish, which means boorish, vulgar, intractable. The second word is nitid. It means bright, lustrous. Quid, British slang for £1 sterling. I was watching a television show about gardening. A man had built a beautiful greenhouse, very small, like about 2 feet wide and 1 foot deep, made of glass. Actually, he didn't build it, he bought it. And he paid something like 800 quid for it. I didn't know what a quid was. I looked it up and it said British slang for £1 sterling. From that day on, I have known what quid is. I don't know how it came about, but it's an interesting and useful word, and you will hear it. It's not like some of these words. You find a vocabulary list, you look at the words, and they are so rarely used that they're completely useless. If you ever used these words, people would think you're nuts. Nobody understands them. What is the point of vocabulary? To use words that other people use, even if it's rarely, as long as it's not 20 standard deviations above the mean. Quid is a useful word. Next word is onerous. It means burdensome, oppressive, and you will find this word used a lot when people are talking about things the government does, because the government is out of control. They are onerous. They pile taxes upon taxes upon taxes upon taxes, and they put a gun to your head for every piece of legislation. Government is onerous. Next word. Perforce. By force of circumstances, of necessity. They're going to take the gold from the people out of necessity, because the private cartel of bankers needs it. They stole all the gold in Fort Knox, and they're going to take the gold perforce. The next word is yclept. It means called or named, and named is an archaic use. Next word, halcyon. It means calm, peaceful. Ductile. Capable of being drawn out or hammered thin, easily led or driven. You will hear this term when people talk about shaping gold, because gold can be hammered to a thickness of 1 molecule. And that's unusual. And it's not brittle. It's malleable. And if you've heard of gold leaf, you know it's a very thin sheet of gold. And people will pick it up in their hands like it's a piece of cloth. That's amazing for any metal. Gold is ductile. It's capable of being drawn out or hammered thin, and if people are ductile, they're easily led or driven. The IRS, which is an illegal and unconstitutional private corporation, finds the general public ductile. They can easily lead them or drive them to file a tax return when Joe Bannister says that most people in the USA do not need to file a tax return, and taking money from their paycheck is wrong. It's illegal, and they do it anyway because they have the people convinced that it's legal. But anyone who has looked up the laws from 1913 will discover quickly that the 16th Amendment was a soak-the-rich 1% tax, and the word income did not mean wages earned by wage earners. It did not mean commissions or salaries. And deducting money from these people's paychecks is illegal. The Supreme Court has already ruled on this. But since the people are so ductile, easily led or driven, the IRS bullies them just like a gangster would. Don't be surprised if the Federal Reserve and the gangster mafia IRS vanish very soon. Next word. Malleable. Capable of being extended or shaped with hammer or rollers. I suppose they make gold leaf with rollers. They must have a lot of weight to crush those molecules to a thickness of 1 atom. Next word. Venial. Capable of being forgiven, excusable. Spraying the people with nano-sized aluminum oxide is not a venial crime. It is not excusable. It is not capable of being forgiven. because it causes Alzheimer's. They spray barium also, and barium attacks the immune system. When you look at barium and aluminum oxide, you might conclude that they're attacking the old people. Why are they killing the old people? Because they don't want to pay them their Social Security. They want them to die. They worked 45 years and paid into the system, and once they retire, if they earn any money, it's deducted. It's a totally criminal and unfair system. To force people to pay into a Ponzi scheme, paying off old investors with new investors' money, it isn't even an investment. You can't even break even with the Social Security system. We need to end a few wars. The 2 wars, Iraq and Afghanistan, have cost us $6 trillion. And that money should go into the Social Security fund so that old people can get some of their money back. These crimes against the people are not venial. They're not excusable. They're not capable of being forgiven. Next word. Tenable. Capable of being held, maintained, or defended. The government is buying guns because they know that what they're doing is wrong and that the people are going to revolt, especially when there's no food in the grocery stores, and that day is coming soon. It's coming because they're intentionally crashing the dollar. This government is not tenable. It's not capable of being held, maintained, or defended. Who's going to defend it? The military is a hair's breadth away from arresting Obama and charging him with crimes against the Constitution. But if you'll notice, when he was inaugurated for the 2nd term, it was a private ceremony. He did not take the oath to the Constitution before the public, and he should have been arrested then. If they arrest him in the year 2015, I'll be satisfied. But he must be arrested and he must go to prison. He doesn't have a valid birth certificate, and everything about him is a fraud. The military is very close to arresting him, and the sooner the better. Next word. Venal. This word describes Congress. Capable of being obtained for money or other consideration, like prostitutes. Venal means open to bribery. That's the Supreme Court also. Congress and the Supreme Court are open to bribery, and so are the Nobel Prize judges. Isn't it obvious when they give a Nobel Prize to someone like Obama? Plastic. Everybody thinks they understand the word plastic. But here's a new definition of plastic that people don't really use much. Capable of being shaped or formed. Pliable. And you can make plastic out of cornstarch, vinegar, glycerin, and water. You boil it, and it becomes thick like cornstarch. But when it dries, it's hard. And the more glycerin you have, the more pliable it is. If you want your plastic rigid like dice, you don't use any glycerin, and it's more brittle, but it's very hard. If you want it soft and flexible, use more glycerin. And you can use other oils as well. Next word is palpable. Capable of being touched or felt. Tangible. Easily perceived. Obvious. When you buy paper gold, it is certainly not palpable, not tangible, not capable of being touched or felt. You're relying on someone's promise to give you gold later. And I don't believe you can trust most of those people that are issuing paper gold. They're going to default. COMEX is not honoring futures contracts. When a teacher delivers a lesson to a classroom of students, the students can easily perceive the material if the teacher is effective. Sometimes a teacher works with abstract ideas. In calculus, you have the limit, and it's very difficult to convey that idea. But you have to if you're going to teach calculus. The people do not understand how the Federal Reserve works or how the banking system works. They don't understand the concept of fractional reserve banking. It is not obvious to them. It is not easily perceived. In economics, they might understand supply and demand. They might understand that if you have demand and a limited supply, the price should rise. Growing demand, limited supply. That's what Bitcoin is. As of today, February 10th, 2015, there are 13.8 million Bitcoins in existence. Many of them have been lost, and many people who hold them will not sell them. And so the available number for sale is very, very small. And people don't understand that concept. It's not easily perceived. It's not obvious. It's not palpable. It's an abstract idea that's over the heads of the people. They only understand the inflationary fiat currency, which is being printed ad infinitum right now by the Federal Reserve. They're lying about the number they're printing. They're claiming to print 50, 60 billion a month, and they're printing 100, 200, 300 billion a month. It's a lie. And this is going to cause runaway inflation. Food prices will quadruple. There will be shortages everywhere as the dollar dies. And these concepts are not palpable to the people. They're not easily perceived, and they're not obvious. Next word. Sentient. Capable of sensation or consciousness. Experiencing sensation. Sentient beings are those that can perceive sensation or have consciousness. Is a robot a sentient being? It's not capable of consciousness, but it is capable of sensation. But it is capable of sensing things. Hot, cold, rough, soft, smooth. And as these robots develop, they will be more and more sentient, but they will never have a consciousness like ours. I have seen amazing things done by robots, like throwing something into the air and catching it. And they move very quickly. They have capabilities far beyond our own. But are they sentient beings? No, they're not considered sentient, even though they're capable of sensation. In fact, they can sense things we can't. They can look in the infrared. They can look in the gamma ray wavelength. We can't do that. There was a crash in Roswell in 1947, and one alien survived. Her name was Airl. A-I-R-L. The book is by Lawrence Spencer. And Matilda O'Donnell McElroy was the nurse there on the scene, the only woman. And the alien communicated with her telepathically, and the alien had a doll body, a high-fidelity body. It did not need water or rest or food. It could see in the infrared wavelengths. It was an amazing construct of science. And it was a sentient being because their society was so advanced that they could pull a soul into a high-fidelity body. So she had a soul. The soul was incorporated into this body, and she didn't need to breathe oxygen. She could work in the vacuum of space. It could be extremely cold, and it didn't matter. It could be hot to a degree much greater than we could withstand. And that was a sentient body. It was a robot, but it had a soul. It was capable of consciousness. Now you see, when you're talking about robots and people and beings from other planets and other galaxies, sentient becomes a thin line. On one side, a being is sentient, and on the other side, it's not. Let's move on. Petulant. Capriciously fretful, peevish, querulous. This word is used a lot, but common people never use this word. When someone defines a word with words that are also challenging, the objective is not met in defining the word. If anyone has trouble with the word capricious, peevish, or querulous, they're not going to understand the meaning of petulant. Next word, chary. This word might also be cherry. It's spelled C-H-A-R-Y. And the reason I say cherry is because when there's one R, the vowel should be long. And my first instinct was to pronounce this word as chari, but it would have to have two R's to have a short vowel. I don't know the correct pronunciation of C-H-A-R-Y, but I would be inclined to say it's chari, and that they broke the rule that a short A vowel is followed by a single consonant in this case. But the word chari means careful, wary, fastidious, finicky. Next word. Exuviae. I've never heard anybody use this word. E-X-U-V-I-A-E. Exuviae. It means cast off skins, shells, or coverings of animals. Why don't they just say molt or shed skin? Common people would say the snake shed its skin. Done. Next word. Pungent. causing a sharp sensation, sharply painful, caustic, painful. I think this word applies very well to taxes and regulations that favor monopolies and big business at the expense of little people. Rules that are pungent, causing a sharp sensation, sharply painful, caustic, painful. You might think of torture. The government has legalized torture, and I hope they get plenty of it when they're arrested. If someone pushed bamboo under your fingernails, that would be very painful. Pungent. Next word. Pestilent. Causing death or epidemic disease. Morally, socially, or politically noxious. That describes our government. And I'm not talking about the clowns in Washington. I'm not talking about the puppets. I'm talking about the real government. The Federal Reserve is the real government. They are morally, socially, and politically noxious. And spraying us with chemicals is causing death and disease. And they keep it all a big secret, and they bring out the poisons in toilet trucks. They have secret compartments on the airplanes that nobody is supposed to know about, but one mechanic discovered them, and he was severely punished. And the people who are doing this to us are causing pestilence. They're causing death, epidemic disease. They are morally, socially, and politically noxious. Pernicious, causing death or great destruction. Deadly, destructive, ruinous. That's what they're doing to the dollar. They're intentionally destroying the American economy. There is a secret government that is pernicious, ruinous, destructive, and deadly, causing death or great destruction. Pernicious. Next word is dismal, causing gloom or depression. Dreary, causing dread or dismay. Dire. All predictions about the future are dreary because of the powers that be. They have created a fake world for us to live in, and they lie about everything, and the future is bleak with them in control. This secret government that owns and controls the president, who is a puppet, the Congress, who is getting rich by voting the way they tell them to vote, and the Supreme Court that is either threatened, blackmailed, or bribed. And I don't like any of those adjectives. When they rationalized Obamacare and said that what was called a penalty in the document was only a tax, that was it for me. I had no more faith or belief in the Supreme Court, and I knew that our entire system had been corrupted. And that's why people give such low approval ratings to government, Congress, the Supreme Court. We don't like what's going on in our country, and the military is about to arrest the president. I'm hearing more and more that he will not make it through 2015. He will be arrested. This is what America needs. We don't need executive orders or people who take us to war without the approval of Congress. That renders Congress obsolete, and it destroys the checks and balances in the U.S. Constitution. These people have created a dismal, dreary, gloomy future for all of us, and they have to go. Next word. Risible, causing laughter, funny. This is a good word. It's not used. I've heard it rarely, but I have heard it, and so the word is not useless. It's a good word. Risible comments, risible gestures, risible facial contortions, causing laughter, and funny. Is it redundant to use the word risible before words like comic? He was a risible comic. I think that would be redundant, because comic already says he causes laughter and he's funny, and when you say risible comic, it's redundant. This is the vernacular of a light beer drinker. His facial gestures are risible. His words are risible. His timing is excellent, and so you laugh. And so his routine is risible. Next word. Sudorific. People don't use this word. It just means causing or inducing sweat. I think they mean perspiration, because when you put a cold glass on the desk, it's going to condense water out of the air, and that's called sweating. But when people cool their bodies on a hot day, that's called perspiration. And apparently these two words are being interchanged, and they might not be. They might have distinct definition, sweat and perspiration. But in this definition of sudorific, it says causing or inducing sweat. So is the glass on the desk with ice cubes in it forming water on the outside of the glass? Is that glass sudorific? Is the cold mixture sudorific and causing the glass to sweat? Or is sudorific perspiration? The definition says causing or inducing sweat. So we're really not clear on the precise meaning of sudorific. Next word. Metastasis. A change of state, substance, or form. A secondary growth of a malignant tumor. The tumor metastasized and hope is diminishing. But the patient mixed up a glass and put some baking soda in it and drank it, and the cancer started to subside. I've heard that baking soda can cause the reversal of secondary growth of malignant tumors. I had some lesions on my arms. I thought it might be skin cancer. I mixed up a glass of grape juice, Concord grape juice, and put in a tablespoon of baking soda, mixed it up, and drank it. And it tasted like a carbonated drink. You could not taste the baking soda. And I did this over a period of weeks. Orange juice, lemonade, anything acidic, mix it with baking soda, and those lesions scratched off. If it was cancer, they died. Does baking soda cure cancer? I don't know, but an entire industry depends on making a killing when you get cancer and you are sick. They don't want to cure your cancer. They would prefer your cancer metastasizes. Next word. Peculiar. Characteristic of one only. Distinctive. We think of behavior as peculiar. But based on this definition, that's not really the right use of that word. This definition fits unique. Characteristic of one only. Distinctive. Well, unique means there's only one, and peculiar means there are few. Distinctive people are rare, but there is not just one. And the definition says characteristic of one only. Peculiar. Might be a good idea to conduct a study of that word and get a better meaning, because this one is ambiguous. It says characteristic of one only, and then it says distinctive. Distinctive is not unique. There are some people with an IQ above 150, but they are not unique. They are distinctive. Peculiar also leans towards odd behavior. Odd behavior. Like a first base coach who rubs his chest and his arms and moves his hat in peculiar ways in order to signal the man on first or second to steal a base. Or a man who's embezzling money at the bank has peculiar behavior. Next word, myopic. This is a great word. Myopic means nearsightedness. The definition here says characterized by a deficiency of foresight or discernment. Is that Congress? Is that government? Myopic? Characterized by a deficiency of foresight or discernment. Every program they initiate has an expected budget, and they are always way past that budget. Way past it. They say it's going to cost $800 billion and it costs $5 trillion. Where does this money come from? They reach a point where they're so far in debt that they have to kill the old people because they can't afford to pay them their Social Security. Social Security, after 45 years of paying into any investment, a person should retire with $10,000 a month income. Instead, they get $850 a month. And if they make $1 working at Burger King, it's deducted. This is a totally criminal system. Government is myopic, characterized by deficiency of foresight or discernment. They're not fit to lead. We need to do away with as many governments as possible. I favor local government only. I don't like being merged into a superstate. It's the wrong direction. Next word, labile. Characterized by adaptability to change or modification. Plastic. What's a good application of this word? Characterized by adaptability. I think Bitcoin is labile because the programmers find the problems and then they solve them. Software is labile. Some old people are set in their ways and they keep putting money into the bank even though the banking system is not safe today. It's obvious they're going to steal everyone's deposits. They passed the Bankruptcy Reform Act of 2005. in which your deposit is a loan to the bank, and often an insolvent bank like Bank of America, Citicorp, or J.P. Morgan Chase. Goldman Sachs is also one of those insolvent corporations. 95% of all derivatives are held by those three banks and Goldman Sachs. And so they are planning to steal the nest eggs of pension funds. And that means old people will not get a check. They won't be able to buy food. And so old people are not labile. They think that because the banking system was safe in the past for decades, that it will always be safe. And it is not safe today. And the gurus like Jim Rogers are saying, get your money out of the bank. He said that a year ago. 2014, early 2014, Jim Rogers said, get your money out of the bank. And people who are on top of it, people who are labile, characterized by adaptability to change or modification, they're following such advice. They're moving into Bitcoin. Young people are more labile than old people who are set in their ways. Next word. Grotesque, this word is overused. Grotesque pertains to something that's far, far uglier than this word is typically applied to. Grotesque is characterized by ludicrous distortion, outlandish, bizarre, extravagant. I would try to find another word to describe something because this word is overused and it's misused. Next word. Sedentary. Characterized by sitting. A couch potato is an individual who sits in front of the television. This is sedentary. Characterized by sitting. A biology teacher at UCLA used to use the word sedentary to describe animal species because some move around and some don't. And those who don't are called sedentary. That's where I heard the word. And they talk about people who have heart attacks as being sedentary. They're not exercising. The next word is diction. It's a very good word. It's your choice of words to express ideas. It's your art or manner of speaking or singing. I never heard the word applied to singing, but I think it's a great word to describe someone's singing. Andrew Basiago has great diction. His choice of words to express ideas is superb, and most lawyers are kings of vocabulary. And judges, you can't use a word in a courtroom that a judge does not understand, unless it's slang, because they know all the words. They read extensively, and they know all the words. When you learn a foreign language, the biggest problem is diction. Which word do you use? If you have many words, you can convey ideas more precisely. So your diction is important as a writer, as a speaker, and in ordinary communications with other people. The average person has a vocabulary of just 600 words that they use over and over again, and I think everyone should have a vocabulary of 50,000 words minimum. That's only 10% of the total number of words in the English language. There are about 500,000. And if you use the other 450,000, you are probably weird. 50,000 is enough. 600 is way too little. And so the average person needs to expand his vocabulary. And when he expands his vocabulary, it will be apparent in his diction, his choice of words to express ideas, his art or manner of speaking or singing. I think when you hit the right notes, they would say you have good diction. Or if you're able to do things with your voice, the Beatles used to do things with their voice. Take one note and sing 2 or 3 notes. And it was beautiful. The people enjoyed it. And when they were singing harmony and they did that together, it was even better. It was a rare skill, and it was pleasing to the ear. And so girls screamed. They scream when I sing too. But it's because their ears are hurting. Next word, eclectic. Choosing what seems best from diverse sources, systems, or styles. It's like going to a salad bar and picking out all the best things for your salad. Your salad is eclectic. It's made up of the best of the salad bar. Some artists will take textures from various places and put them all together, and it's beautiful, especially in mosaic designs. Eclectic, choosing what seems best from diverse sources, systems, or styles. There's a song that comes to mind, Cisco Kid by War. I think they're a Chicago group. And they had this Latino in the group, and he plays some sort of a drum that is just beautiful and fits that song so perfectly, and it gives that song a flavor, a character. And so when you blend these different types of music, it's wonderful. The flamenco guitarists in Spain do this wailing that's characteristic of Arab music. And the country of Spain was occupied by Arabs for 800 years. And so you have words that creeped in, words like ojalá. This is an Arab word that is now part of the Spanish language. And so you have this blend of cultures. And another great eclectic is talavera. It's a type of pottery from Puerto León, Mexico. It has Persian influence, Arab influence, Spanish influence, and of course, in the New World, it has Mexican influence. And this is beautiful pottery, but it is eclectic. And when you study talavera, tile, you find that it goes back to Iran, Italy, Spain, Mexico, just to name a few. I like this word, eclectic. Someone says, what is your style? If you say eclectic, you're choosing what seems best from diverse sources, systems, or styles. You're bringing together the best. That's eclectic. The next word is ambit, A-M-B-I-T. And the definition is circuit or compass. There's a second definition, bounds or limits. I don't hear people use this word. The definition is obscure, and I can't tell you any more about this word. Ambit. Now we have a word ambitious. I suspect that that's the same root. How would ambitious relate to ambit if ambit is bounds or limits? To be ambitious is to want to achieve things, to be energetic toward accomplishing a goal. And the word ambit is bounds or limits. So I'm not seeing any connection between ambitious and ambit. Are you? Next word. Surreptitious. They're giving a definition of clandestine, and I think most people who don't know the word surreptitious also don't know the word clandestine. And so the long definition is done or being done without authority. And that's what the president is doing. He's violating the Constitution. He's not consulting Congress. He's taking us to war without authority. His behavior is surreptitious. And clandestine is when he was inaugurated in a private ceremony. To me, that's clandestine, doing things secretly. And there is the association of illegal, immoral, unethical associated with the word clandestine. Acting without authority is surreptitious, and that's why he might be arrested. The people have had it with this guy. Next word, germane, closely allied, highly appropriate. I put up videos and people make comments, and sometimes their comments are germane. They're highly appropriate for the video. But if the video is about Bitcoin and they're talking about aliens, this is not germane. It's not closely allied. It's not highly appropriate. It's not germane. Those comments should be saved for a more appropriate comment section. If the video is about aliens, it's appropriate and germane to talk about aliens. But it's not appropriate if the video is about Bitcoin. Next word. Proximate. Closely related in space, time, or order, nearest or next. Get off at the proximate exit. Get off at the nearest or the next exit. The government isn't very good at approximating the unemployment rates because they have designed the rates to be a lie. They don't count people who are unemployed. And I'm not talking about a few, I'm talking about the majority. They delete the majority of people who are unemployed, and they expect us to believe these bogus unemployment rates. They're not proximate. They're not closely related in space, time, or order. Things that are nearby are proximate. And if two things happened at about the same time, you might say that they are proximate. Or a president who is following another president, these two presidents are proximate. They're closely related in space, time, or order. They're nearby. They are the nearest. They are the next. And if you want to approximate who the next president will be, if these war criminals who have control of America win, they will appoint Hillary Clinton in 2016. And I think the revolution just might break out at that time, because we don't want her. We want a constitutional president. We want real change. We want to eliminate this representative system because there are too many lobbyists with too much money, and they're writing the legislation, and Congress isn't even reading it. The representative system is tired. It's obsolete. Taking us to war without consulting Congress renders Congress obsolete. So the proximate puppet is likely to be Hillary Clinton. Next word. Nebulous. This word means cloudy, misty, hazy, vague. In the Orion constellation, there is a cluster of stars below Alnitak, Alnilam, and Mintaka. In the upper left, you have Betelgeuse. In the upper right, you have Bellatrix. The lower right is Rigel. Betelgeuse and Rigel are two of the biggest stars in this galaxy. They are not the biggest two. They are among the biggest. And in the bottom left, you have Salph. S-A-L-P-H. Salph. But the brightest nebulous in the sky is right under Alnitak, Alnilam, and Mintaka. It's a cluster. And I remember reading that it was the brightest nebulous in our galaxy. When people don't understand the definition of a word, you might say that their understanding of that word is cloudy, misty, hazy, or vague. You could say nebulous. When Congress has no idea what a program is going to cost, that's nebulous. Cloudy, misty, hazy, vague. Next word. Putative. P-U-T-A-T-I-V-E. Commonly accepted or supposed, reputed, assumed to exist, or to have existed. I think this word refers to Jesus and God. Commonly accepted or supposed, reputed, assumed to exist, or to have existed. Putative gods. They have no proof, they just assume. And they grab little kids and they brainwash them to believe in the same assumption. And sometimes our putative beliefs are wrong. We assume something is true and it's not. I think the Big Bang Theory is assumed to have happened and it didn't. I think the universe is energy, and some of it converts into matter, and it happens everywhere in the universe. And when it happens, matter is transformed from energy. The aliens say that matter is frozen energy. And if matter begins everywhere, then you're going to see clumps of it as it sticks together, because there is an attraction between any two particles of matter. And so you find these clumps lumping together in bigger and bigger objects. And if a small object orbits a big object, the big object is the planet and the little object is the moon. And when that thing gets big enough and ignites, it's now a star. And this is the progression that is apparent. Scientists made a huge error. They said that if you trace all these galaxies back, that they all trace back to one singularity where all the matter in the universe was concentrated into something the size of a pinhead. This is ludicrous. It's crazy. E equals mc squared. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. Energy is convertible into mass and mass into energy. Nuclear power plants are based on converting mass to energy by splitting the atom or fusing two atoms to release energy. Energy and matter are interchangeable, convertible, one into the other. And since the entire universe has so much energy and some of it converts to matter, you're going to find this happening all over the universe. And if galaxies are moving away from each other, it's because there is a repulsion force. There's an attractive force and a repulsion force. And all of the galaxies are moving away from all other galaxies at the same time. And so somebody says if you run the clock backwards, you wind up with singularity, a single point that contains all matter. This is crazy. The Big Bang Theory. And a lot of scientists believe it, but I think it's going to be proven wrong. Next word, ruth, R-U-T-H. It means compassion, pity, sorrow, especially regret or remorse. People don't use this word because a woman's name is Ruth. Now they do use the word ruthless, someone with no compassion, no pity, no sorrow, no regret, and no remorse. They are ruthless. We need to use Ruth. This is a good word. I consider everyone in government to be ruthless, except a few. People like Ron Paul was a good guy. He's no longer in government, but he is still trying to do good things. People make mistakes, and the word Ruth fits their regret or remorse. If a guy killed his wife in a fit of anger, and he shows the court that he regrets it and he feels remorse, they are more likely to go easy on him than if he killed 8 student nurses and has no regrets and remorse about it. And this is the behavior of one man who died in prison. I think his name was Richard Speck. He killed 8 student nurses, went to prison, and he died in prison. He had no regret or remorse for killing those young girls. Next word, cogent, compelling or constraining, especially by appealing to reason. Now, if a salesman makes a good presentation, he shows you why you need the product. His argument is cogent, convincing, compelling, appealing to reason. And every leader should be cogent, should be able to sell an idea based on merit. And what we have in leadership today is people who use an excuse to take the guns. They commit an inside job, false flag terrorist attack, and then try to take the guns away from the people because some crazy guy that they hypnotized killed a bunch of children. And therefore we have to take the guns from the people. They're not appealing to reason. They're committing heinous acts against the people, against innocent children, defenseless kids. And this is our leadership? This is not leadership. They do not have a cogent argument. They are corrupt. They are lacking remorse. They are ruthless. Next word, fatuity, complacement, stupidity, foolishness. I couldn't think of a better word to describe government all over the planet. They're not sensible people. They're not fit to lead. Fatuity, complacement, stupidity, foolishness. Oxidized aluminum oxide is not a venial crime. It is not excusable. It is not capable of being forgiven because it causes Alzheimer's. They spray barium also, and barium attacks the immune system. When you look at barium and aluminum oxide, you might conclude that they're attacking the old people. Why are they killing the old people? Because they don't want to pay them their Social Security. They want them to die. They worked 45 years and paid into the system, and once they retire, if they earn any money, it's deducted. It's a totally criminal and unfair system to force people to pay into a Ponzi scheme, paying off old investors with new investors' money. It isn't even an investment. You can't even break even with the Social Security system. We need to end a few wars. The 2 wars, Iraq and Afghanistan, have cost us $6 trillion. And that money should go into the Social Security fund so that old people can get some of their money back. These crimes against the people are not venial. They're not This is Vocabulary Improvement, February 10th, 2015, and the first word is churlish, which means boorish, vulgar, intractable. The second word is nitid. It means bright, lustrous. Quid, British slang for £1 sterling. I was watching a television show about gardening. A man had built a beautiful greenhouse, very small, like about 2 feet wide and 1 feet deep, made of glass. Actually, he didn't build it, he bought it. And he paid something like 800 quid for it. I didn't know what a quid was. I looked it up and it said British slang for £1 sterling. From that day on, I have known what quid is. I don't know how it came about, but it's an interesting and useful word, and you will hear it. It's not like some of these words. You find a vocabulary list, you look at the words, and they are so rarely used that they're completely useless. If you ever use, and named is an archaic use. Next word, halcyon. It means calm, peaceful, ductile, capable of being drawn out or hammered thin, easily led or driven. You will hear this term when people talk about shaping gold, because gold can be hammered to a thickness of 1 molecule. And that's unusual. And it's not brittle. It's malleable. And if you've heard of gold leaf, you know it's a very thin sheet of gold. And people will pick it up in their hands like it's a piece of cloth. That's amazing for any metal. Gold is ductile. It's capable of being drawn out or hammered thin, and if people are ductile, they're easily led or driven. The IRS, which is an illegal and unconstitutional private corporation, finds the general public ductile. They can easily lead them or drive them to file a tax return when Joe Bannister says that most people in the USA do not need to file a tax return, and taking money from their pay. Used these words, people would think you're nuts. Nobody understands them. What is the point of vocabulary? To use words that other people use, even if it's rarely, as long as it's not 20 standard deviations above the mean. Quid is a useful word. Next word is onerous. It means burdensome, oppressive, and you will find this word used a lot when people are talking about things the government does, because the government is out of control. They are onerous. They pile taxes upon taxes upon taxes upon taxes, and they put a gun to your head for every piece of legislation. Government is onerous. Next word, perforce. By force of circumstances, of necessity. They're going to take the gold from the people out of necessity, because the private cartel of bankers needs it. They stole all the gold in Fort Knox, and they're going to take the gold perforce. The next word is yclept. It means called or named. Paycheck is wrong. It's illegal, and they do it anyway because they have the people convinced that it's legal. But anyone who has looked up the laws from 1913 will discover quickly that the 16th Amendment was a soak-the-rich 1% tax, and the word income did not mean wages earned by wage earners. It did not mean commissions or salaries. And deducting money from these people's paychecks is illegal. The Supreme Court has already ruled on this. But since the people are so ductile, easily led or driven, the IRS bullies them just like a gangster would. Don't be surprised if the Federal Reserve and the gangster mafia IRS vanish very soon. Next word. Malleable. Capable of being extended or shaped with hammer or rollers. I suppose they make gold leaf with rollers. They must have a lot of weight to crush those molecules to a thickness of 1 atom. Next word, venial. Capable of being forgiven, excusable. Spraying the people with nano